Let's head to the future and see what Marty and Doc are up to. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. Today we're going to head deeper into the Back to the Future trilogy. But before we do that, please do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. Today we're going to talk about the sequel to the smash hit Back to the Future, aptly titled Back to the Future 2. Now, Back to the Future 2 came out a little over 5 years later, November 22nd of 1989. It's rated PG, just like the first film. It's an hour and 48 minutes long, had a budget of $40 million, so they got a nice, healthy budget increase. And upon release, it made 119 in America and 332 worldwide. Now, this was shot back-to-back with Part 3, which at the end of this film, you see a trailer for Part 3. I never liked that, but they do that just to hype up the next one, obviously. And then we get that stinger at the end that says, "To be concluded." Co-written by Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis. They came back. They had no intentions of making a sequel after the first film, believe it or not. But when Universal had interest in making a sequel, Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis decided to stick around so they could do the next two sequels and finish off their trilogy that they had no intentions of doing to begin with, but we got a trilogy out of it, so what the hell. Cast-wise, we have Michael J. Fox back as Marty McFly. We got Christopher Lloyd back as Dr. Emmett Brown. We got Leah Thompson back as Lorraine McFly. Tom Wilson's back as Biff Tannen and Griff Tannen. And Elizabeth Shue came in to take over for Claudia Wells as Marty's girlfriend, Jennifer. And that was only because Claudia Wells was not available to come back for this film. Now, this film starts right off where the first one ended, with Doc showing back up as Marty and Jennifer are reconnecting in his driveway. And now Elizabeth Shue's there. They had to reshoot it, obviously, because Elizabeth Shue's there instead of Claudia Wells. And Doc Brown proceeds to tell them there's a problem with their kids and they have to do something about it. And they have taken Jennifer with them, and they head back to they headed to the future. At this time, when they shot this in 88, 2015 was a long way off. And they go to 2015 because Doc is aware that Marty's son is going to get involved with Griff and his band of goons, and they're going to do a robbery, and he's going to go to prison. And Doc wants Marty to help him prevent that, which they do by Marty dressing up as his son in a pretty cool, amusing scene. And in the Cafe 80s, which is hilarious, we see the first ever screen appearance by Elijah Wood playing that video game that Marty comes over and shows him how to play. And he goes, "Oh, that's a baby's toy," and they walk away. And we get introduced to the hoverboard here, which plays a big part, and not only towards the end of this film, but in Part 3, which we're going to get to Part 3 later this week. And then Marty and Doc Jennifer ends up getting taken home by the police because they leave her in this alley. They knock her out with this device Doc has. And she ends up running into herself, trying to get out of the house, and older her, because her and Marty do get married. And they have two kids, both played by Michael J. Fox. And we see Lorraine show up, but not Crispin Glover. Crispin Glover would not come back for this film, and they brought somebody else in to play him in the aged makeup. So Crispin Glover did not come back from disputes over the script. And so they brought a different actor in, but he's not on screen all that much anyway. And then Marty and Doc go back to 1985, but unfortunately, Marty had purchased this sports almanac with all the sports scores from the 1950s up till, I don't remember the year exactly, I forget now, and Doc gives him a whole diatribe about, "I didn't create the time machine to make money, we can't be doing this," and he throws it in the trash can. But Biff is right there, and he witnesses them, and he takes the DeLorean, takes it back to 1955, gives it to his younger self, and then comes back before Doc and Marty realize he took it. So when they go back to 1985, it's a totally different 1985. Biff has become very wealthy. He has a casino in Hill Valley, and Hill Valley's pretty much turned into a shithole, a crime-ridden shithole. And Marty's mom is now married to Biff, that he finds out, and George is dead because we find out Biff shot him and killed him. And once he finds out where Biff got and when he got the sports almanac, they have to go back to 1955. So now there's two Doc Browns, two Marty McFlys. They have to get the sports almanac and destroy it to set things right. And they are successful in doing that. But at the end of the film, Doc Brown in the DeLorean hovering over Marty gets struck by lightning and gets sent back to 1885. And Marty gets a letter delivered by Western Union. And we see Doc and Marty from the end of the first one. Marty goes off, Doc celebrating in the street as Marty's going back to 85. And Marty shows up and Doc passes out, and that's the end of Back to the Future 2, with the "to be concluded" coming in at the end, and then we get the little trailer for Part 3. What to like about this film? Well, I think it's a very creative way to bring these characters back. And there's a lot going on in this film, a lot to keep track of. And I remember when I was a kid and I saw this, when I rented it for the first time, I didn't get to see this in the theaters, but I remember renting it. And I liked it, but not as much as the first film. It was hard for me to follow. I think I was 11 when I first saw this. It was hard for me to follow the story all the way because there's a lot of things going on. There's two Martys, there's two Docs in 1955. You see Marty watching himself. I don't think I really got it at that time. But as I've gotten older, this movie has definitely grown on me, and I love it. Now I love it. Back when I was younger, it took me a while to get here because I don't think I completely understood what the hell was going on. Now I get it, and I really do think this is a very strong sequel. There's a lot of creative and smart things going on here, and Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale writing the script really kept things in perspective and kept it easy to follow. Now, when I first showed my son this, he didn't get it either. I had to do a lot of explaining as the movie went on because he wasn't quite getting what he was seeing either, as I didn't when I first saw it. But it is really well done, and it's a really smart screenplay and a really smart movie, the way to keep everything, if you're really paying attention, everything does make total sense, even though there's a lot of things getting thrown at you as the plot unfolds. And it's just great to be back with these characters again. And Marty and Doc they're the stars here. And Biff. Tom Wilson as Biff is great here, and he gets to play two different versions of Biff. He gets to play Griff, and he gets to play Biff old and young. And he's great here as well. Everybody's great, but it's a really well done and smart sequel, and it's only grown on me over the years. At the time, I always liked this film, but I don't think I understood it. It's not as high on my list as it is now. Now I love it, and the third one we'll discuss later this week. But it's really a strong continuation of the first film. And for how much I love the first film, this is a very great sequel. You got to give hats off to Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis for keeping everything in perspective and doing a good job with the timelines and keeping the time travel stuff pretty easy to understand in a way that makes sense too. Not saying there's not plot holes, but it makes pretty goddamn good sense here. And one thing I forgot to mention in my review for the first film, Alan Silvestri's score is so iconic in these films, and it's just as great here. I mean, he adds some different themes, but we get that classic Back to the Future theme. Just a great score, very iconic, love it. I forgot to mention that in my first review for the first film, but just fantastic. Dean Cundey came back again to shoot this film for Robert Zemeckis. It looks great. In 4K, on that 4K there, it looks great. The only problem with the 4K, and some minor detail because we got to take in consideration when the film was made, some of the effects, especially in 4K, are very noticeable in certain spots. For the most part, they still come off pretty damn seamless, but there are a few, especially in the upgraded ultra high def, that look a little here and there. It looks a little off. But again, you can forgive that for the time this movie was made and for what they were able to pull off. I mean, all the future stuff, most of the stuff never came true, but it's so cool to see. And the Jaws 19 joke is great when Marty's in front of the movie theater and that 3D shark comes out and tries to bite him and he screams. I mean, it's all good stuff. The hoverboard stuff, which I love how they use it later in this film when they have to get the sports almanac from Griff, and then it comes into play even in the third one, which again, we'll talk about later this week. Again, this was filmed back-to-back with Part 3. I know if you've seen this, you know that. Some CGI effects were used. Now, this was early CGI. Most of the effects they didn't use CGI, but there was a few little spots of CGI actually used in this film. That's about it, all I have for trivia. Overall, this is a sequel that's grown on me only over time. I really enjoy this sequel. I would give Back to the Future 2 a 9.5 out of 10. It's that good of a sequel, and this is a terrific sequel to a great original film. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for Back to the Future 2. What are your thoughts on this sequel? Leave a comment down below, let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video, I greatly would appreciate that. I'll be back later in the week to cap this trilogy off with the Back to the Future 3 review. And coming up, I'm going to do Blood Rage before Thanksgiving. We might revisit Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because I have that 4K coming. I can't wait to watch that 45 minutes of deleted or alternate scenes that they shot. And much more fun stuff coming up. But until next time, bye.